There are over 100 different gemstones that come in the color of green. Diamonds, emeralds, jade, even sapphire. But peridot is the only gemstone that comes in one color, green, from a beautiful yellowish green to the most highly valued olive green. So if you know someone who loves the color green, peridot might be the stone for you. Discover the value of your story. Increase. So this award lets me know that good morning. Bonjour. Comment ça va? Et toi? Ça va très bien. Je suis heureux. Bienvenue, Wan Ying, bienvenidos, benvenuta, benvenita, namaste, and welcome. Welcome to another exciting episode of Gem Hunter Stories. My name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemmological storyteller. And each and every week, I get the unique and magnificent opportunity to take you on an adventure, to places you've never been before, to hear stories you've never heard before. What I do on this show is I take the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, precious metals, and fine jewelry, and I put it all together into a story. What I have discovered over many years is that many of the same characteristics, the same attributes, the same traits that we highly appraise in gemstones and precious metals, you can find in people. So what I do is take those gem stories and use them as a template, as an inception point, as a bridge to help people, to empower people, to remind people to take time to discover the value of their story, of who they are as people, of how they interact with the life. Thank you, Barbara. I wanted to kind of continue on with the conversation that we were having last week, because as I told you guys every week, it's really a journey for me. Each time I do this show, I don't know, it's like I know where I'm at the time, and then a week later, I'm in a whole different place. So as I was going through last week's show, we talked about, before I even go there, when I was a kid, I grew up as some of you know, I grew up in a dysfunctional household. My mom was a serious alcoholic, and so I didn't grow up really with a lot of people in my life. My brother and I, we weren't really close. um, both trying to dodge different things going on. So the television was, in many ways, my friend, my parent in a way. And because I am a nerd. The television shows I would always watch would be all the kind of the science fiction, action, adventure type of movies, type of television shows. And every Saturday morning, I would watch Johnny Quest. And I don't know, this it just came up this week as I was just thinking about how I got here. Johnny Quest. And I used to love Johnny Quest. It only came on for about a year, 1964 to 1965. I was 4 or 5 years old. But as you know, when you're 4 or 5, those are images, those are things that are emblazoned in your heart and your spirit. You grow up with that if it's a powerful enough story or message. So Johnny Quest, Star Trek, Mutual Omaha, Wild Kingdom. I learned how to swim in Harlem, New York, on the 6th floor, watching Jacques Cousteau, the underworld adventure, undersea adventures of Jacques Cousteau. Remember that? Literally, I was thrown in the deep side of the pool as a kid. I was about maybe 8. And a kid threw me in the deep part of the pool. I probably would have drowned. I remember clearly as I was going down, struggling, help, help, help. All of a sudden, I remembered, wait a minute. We did this. Jacques Cousteau was doing this the other day. Why don't you just do what he did? So I just literally started swimming my way out. It wasn't graceful, but I got out. I survived. So Star Trek, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, The Land That Time Forgot, and of course Star Trek, and then Star Trek was my first really sci-fi movie, and then of course Star Wars. And as I just so last week we were talking about gemstones, Jedi Knights, and the profound elegance of a lightsaber. And thank you for all your comments and the things that you said to me in regards to that. I'm glad, especially the Star Wars fan, I'm glad this touched you and you understood it in a different way. And those of you who don't watch Star Wars, I hope you watch it. And last week, what I was saying was that, so let's break it down. Let's do a quick review. Gemstones. And I told you that all gemstones have metaphysical powers. When you look at the history of gemstones, all gemstones, which can be found all over the world, have metaphysical powers. And the thing about that is what is so amazing to me, and it still is 20 years later, that every society, every culture, every race, every religion, black, white, wherever you come from, Asian, Hispanic, wherever you come from in the world, you have a relationship with gemstones. Just in some of it's so similar and some of it's different, but you all have a relationship with gemstones. And I taught you that how each gemstone, this is the blue sapphire, this is the cashmere sapphire. That gemstone has specific metaphysical properties. In the case of the blue sapphire, awareness and discipline. And each one has its own concept, its own metaphysical properties that people believe in for thousands of years. Then we talked about the Jedi Knight. And I told you, especially those of you who are not really familiar with Star Wars, into the Jedi Knights is more than just people walking around with costumes and things like the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing. It's more than that. It's the whole concept of Star Wars is more than that. That what the Jedi Knight was people who were in tune with the Force. And the Force can be anything that you see on a spiritual level bigger than you. You're in tune with the Force. And as I said in last week, and I just want to say it again because I love it, when Obi-Wan Kenobi told Luke Skywalker, what did he say? Think about it. He said, Luke, the Force is an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it binds us, it brings the galaxy together. That's the Force. And so a Jedi Knight is someone who not only understood that the Force was all around them, but he or she understood that there was something special about them that could allow them to tap into that. And when you really extrapolate that out, you can understand that being, if you're a musician, if you're a chef, if you're a business owner, if you're a designer, if you're a teacher, if you're a mom, that's that. So you understand who you are as a Jedi Knight, and you tap into that. The people in science, every profession, the thing that made them great, the thing that made them different, is they took whatever they're into to a higher level. So we talked about that's what a Jedi Knight is. That's what a Jedi Knight. Jedi Knights are all over. Simone Biles is a Jedi Knight. I mean, everybody does gymnastics. I did gymnastics as a young man, but I could never. I almost get hurt watching her just do it. She is a Jedi Knight in terms of gymnastics. And so you had a choice. You can either be a Jedi Knight, you can be a Sith Lord, someone who took it to an evil level. Think about someone like El Chapo, who didn't have a formal education, but he ran a multi-billion-dollar drug empire. Or you can be somebody in between. Someone who understands the good and the dark side of the Force. Then we talked about what a lightsaber is. A lightsaber is built by, the thing that makes a lightsaber is this crystal, a gemstone called the kyber crystal, that a Jedi Knight, when he first starts training, when he gets selected, because there's something inside of him that makes him special. Think of all the people in history who were taken to different schools, the first thing that comes to mind, Michael Phelps. His mother threw him in the pool because he had ADHD, and he turns out that his whole body, his whole everything was built to swim, and that's why who he is. So a kyber crystal was when before they became Jedis, when they were still Padawans, when they were still novice, they would find a kyber crystal, and that kyber crystal is also in tune with the Force, and that kyber crystal and it came in a variety of different colors. It was transparent when you first started, but once you touched it, your energy, the Force that's inside of me, that energy that's inside of me, got transferred into the crystal. So what a lightsaber is, so this is what the construction of a lightsaber is. Technology. It's technology. You had different colored crystals based on who you are. And then, and it was used by Jedi Knights and Sith Lords, the good guys and the bad guys. They both use lightsabers. In fact, the Death Star, remember, those of you not Star Wars fans, remember that big thing, that's no moon? That's no moon. That's a space station. The Death Star was run by a kyber crystal, huge, but kyber crystal. And so your lightsaber came in whatever color that manifests inside of who you are. Red, green, purple, all those colors were manifestations of who you are inside. And an extension of you. That's why you always saw the bad Jedi Knights having red lightsabers. I mean, there's variation, but mostly red knights. And then you saw the good Jedi. The Sith Lords were bad, red. Jedi Knights were a variety of different colors based on who they are. It's an extension. That's the key point. It's an extension of who they are. And ultimately, whether you became a Jedi Knight or Sith Lord was depending on the decision that you made. Write that down. The decision that you made. I used to have in my classroom, when I taught for Chicago Public School System, I would tell the kids, we talked about the whole concept of Star Wars was built into their grading system. And when I told them, I had it on the wall, was a poster that said the only difference between the light and the dark side of the Force was a decision. You had to make a decision on which direction you were going to take. You had to choose what you were going to be. And when you, especially if you follow superhero movies at all, or really stories, there's always that moment in the story that the hero of the story, male or female, would have to make a decision. Am I going to do something good? Am I going to do something bad with that energy that I have inside of me? El Chapo could have been a CEO of a major corporation legally, but he chose the dark side. And the reason why this is important is because that's what you have to do with your story. When you create a story, you have to start out by making a decision which direction that you're going to take that story. When we talked a long time ago, we talked about the 7 elements of the story. Well, that's what a sound is. That first element, sound, is the element when you've decided that you're going to do a piece that's a romantic song or classical music beat or upbeat or melancholy or happy and joyful. You have to make that decision every day in your life. What is the direction you're taking your story? And whatever direction you take will dictate the value. The value of that story is dictated that when a gemologist, when a lapidary or a diamantaire, a diamond cutter, cuts a gemstone, he or she has to make a decision on what he's going to do or what she's going to do with it. She starts out with a rough. It just looks like just a rock. And then he or she has to cut it, has to understand which direction, how am I going to cut it? Is it round? Is it square? Is it princess cut? Is it heart shape? Is it round, brilliant? Which direction am I going to cut that rough gemstone to bring out what story I'm going to take in order to bring out the maximum value of that gemstone? That's no different than you in your life. No different. Those of you who are lawyers, you decided that. Mommy, I'm going to be a lawyer. Those of you who decided to open up your own business, you decided that. Even though, businesses fail every day. I don't care. I'm a fool. I'm going to open up a business and I'm going to be successful. We all heard the story about how Oprah was fired. Oh, well, we don't think you're going to make it here. And Oprah was like, yeah, okay. And then, how many years later, Oprah is Oprah. She made a decision. There's something inside of her, the Jedi Knight that she was, that's the direction that she was going to take. That's the direction she was going to take. I think about that movie, Heartbreak Ridge, when Private Desmond Doss, who was a conscientious objector, did not even want to touch a weapon. And yet he won the Medal of Honor, saving like 80 guys. No weapons. He decided that his faith in God, was so much so that he could do what God made him do without a weapon. Saved 80 people by himself. That's the value. And once you want, and the only way you get there is you gotta believe. That's the common thread to this whole thing. You have to believe when a Jedi reaches out for an object. He doesn't go, I hope it works. God, I hope it works. I hope it works this time. No. He knows that it's going to work. If you play music, remember that scene in Ray, when Ray Charles, they wanted him to play more, and he was just like, he didn't have any more pieces set up, and he said, okay, come on, let's just do this, and he just started playing. He knew that there was something inside of him, who he was as a person, as a musician. He understood his lightsaber was that piano, and he understood. Just give me time, and I got this. He trusted. He believed in the force. His force, what works for him. Take a second and apply that in so many different ways. everything, every person you've ever heard in your life, male, female, wherever they came from, whatever they do, that's great. They made a decision that they were going to tune into their skill, their ability, and become that. That's what this whole book is about. As a man thinketh, what you think about, you bring about. So today's show is called The Gem Hunter: Art, Science, History, Magic, because that is the name of my company. Not only the name of my company, but it's the whole concept of what this show is and what I do in workshops and seminars, what I do in my classrooms. Everything is about using gemstones, the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, to make that analogy between what you see in gemstones and the praise and value. What the thing that the same way you go, oh my God, that's so beautiful. It's the same way you can do that within your own life and what you do. So we're going to take it. So, and the way I came to this understanding is through this organization called Toastmasters International. When I joined Toastmasters 16 years ago, 2007, I was angry. Oh my God, I was so messed up. PTSD, all kinds of things. And as I told you, my ex-wife said, I'm so tired of you talking. Oh my God. Yeah. I laugh every time because it's so funny when I think about it. And she said, why don't you join this organization called Toastmasters? And I did. And tomorrow we're going to have an open house. This is a shameless commercial. I want the whole world to know that I am the president of Broadview Toastmasters. And tomorrow we're going to have an open house. And I'll put the link again on my Facebook page. But here's the number. I would invite the whole planet to come to our open house tomorrow, because what you see me do, what you see, how, if you watch my show and everything, you notice I don't have a script or anything. There's no teleprompter. This is just from here. I learned that by becoming a Toastmaster. So tomorrow there's going to be an open house. You'll hear not necessarily, well, I will speak, but you will have not a speech, but I will participate in the roles, and you will hear people at different levels of being able to tell their story, because that's what it does. That's what that organization does. It allows you to stand on the stage of your life and for one brief shining moment create a sound that resonates with people. So my name of my company, The Gem Hunter: Gemmological Appraisals and Storytelling Services, Art, Science, History, and Magic. And the reason why I named it that was because I really couldn't decide what direction I wanted to take with it. I didn't, because gemology is probably the most amazing science I've ever studied in my life. One of the most amazing things. I can do gemology forever. I can do this show literally every week and have something different to say every week, for the most part. And I say that with no hyperbole, not because of me, just because of what it is. So what I want to do for the next few weeks, not necessarily every week, but basically the whole concept of it, I'm going to talk about art, science, history, magic. And if you've been watching my show for a while, I've been going back and forth, but I really want to today give you an idea of what each category means, and ultimately how it relates to you. And that's how you begin to discover the value of your story, because you have to, the way to begin to think about your story is you have to go back. Oftentimes, and I told you, once upon a time, it's a time machine. It really is. It really is. Once upon a time is a time machine. That's why when I asked the question, tell me, all over the world, I've asked the same question. Tell me the first story that your mother, your father, your uncle, your grandmother, your baby, whoever, the neighbor down the street, tell me the first story that they said to you. How did it start? And 9 times out of 10, people will say, once upon a time. So we are genetically predisposed to understand stories, and stories Everything we do came to us by virtue of a story. So therefore, everything you know, everything you do in your life came to you by virtue of a story. And that's the most important you can ever do in your life, is to be able to tell a story. Not just a story to other people, but a story to yourself. A story to yourself. So art. When you talk about gemology, it is absolutely breathtaking. The art of gemstones, the art of precious metals. I grew up, I didn't have that concept when I was growing up. My mother didn't have a lot of pieces. She didn't have a lot of pieces. She had some nice pieces, ring and everything else. But it was never like, she never had like a jewelry box of a whole bunch of stuff. No. So I had to learn it. And the way I learned it when I first got into gemology or working with gemstones was a woman named Cosette Barry. Cosette she was Picasso. I mean, literally, there would be so many times she would call me up in the morning and say 3 o'clock in the morning and say, I got it, because someone commissioned her to do a piece. And I got it. And I was like, well, you got what? And she was, I know what I want to do. And she would describe to me how she wanted the gemstones, the metal, the way it was going to be set and everything else. And I'm like, you see this? And she would see it. So think about it. When you think about the art of gemology, this is the Millennium Sapphire. This artist felt that this was an 80,000 carat sapphire. He decided what he was going to do with this is to take the whole history of mankind from the beginning to present day when he cut that, and take all the significant periods in that time to create and carve it into that sapphire. This is one of the most $500 million. This is how much it's worth. So the art, when you talk about the art of gemology, when you talk about art, you're talking about something that is just, people can see this. There are people in the world that sapphire did not look like that when they found it, when they dug it up. Those diamonds, that metal, all that is taking these natural materials and creating something beautiful. And I've shown you these pieces over the almost 3 years we've been together, just different Bulgari, Cartier, just so many pieces of Erte. Oh my God. These are people who saw art in a completely different way, and their lightsaber, their thing, the extension of who they are, manifest in the pieces of jewelry they created. The person that made this saw it before it was actually made. So when I say art, that's what I'm talking about. Not just art and gemstones. I'm talking about art and who you are. I train people how to tell stories. And the first thing I ask them, I listen to them, because what I want to hear is the music that lives inside of your heart and your soul. If you drive a bus and you've been driving a bus for a long time and you're still excited about it, and you wanted to tell that story, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, tell me what made you get into bus driving. And without fail, you'll start talking at first, and there's a whole lot, and then eventually you'll get to what I call your unconscious sound, where you just start talking, and what I hear is the art, the beauty of that coming together. I know people who can cook. They don't mean I just put it in there. I mean, I'm a little better than that. But people who can cook, every ingredient is a facet on a gemstone of call your food, your dinner. That's what art is. That's what it means when you stand on a stage and make that presentation, whether it be a Toastmaster stage or whatever. What you're doing is taking the music. You're doing no different than what Mozart did. He lived a horrible life He died when he was 36 years old, but yet 221 years later, we still talk about Mozart. That's the art. That's what it is. Science. When you begin to, I studied in 4 schools really, but GIA, Gemmological Institute of America, GEMA, the Gemmological Association of Great Britain, which I'm still working on getting my PhD or fellowship in. And then the school that really brought it all together is the International School of Gemmology. And you've heard me talk about Robert James, just the way he sees it. But science, I'm a nerd, as I said. I'm the kind of guy, you know how everybody can talk about what happened on Monday Night Football, what happened Sunday and everything, can give you those scores. That's how I feel about science. Science is just, science is just beautiful to me. I'd rather watch the Discovery Channel than watch who. Even I'm a Giants fan, Yankees. Yeah, I like it. It's cool. But, in comparison, yeah. So when you talk about the science of gemmology, what you're talking about is something that is a rough, just something rocks. Literally, you would walk down the street and you saw, if I sprinkled those sapphires over your child's playground, your child might see it because of the pretty colors. You might say, oh, what's that? And would never think of what it is. And we talked about that. That is aluminum oxide. That's all it is. It's aluminum oxide with different varieties of iron and titanium, which gave it different colors. Every gemstone comes from a place. What makes it really rare, what makes it really special is the science of it, that it took those certain elements that just happen to be brought together in a place, in Brazil, in Madagascar, in Indonesia, in Colorado, in Mexico. Just the universe just put those elements together. And on top of that, was able to add something to it to create what you see. And that's all science. They're still using that 118. Remember the periodic table? 118 elements that the whole universe is made out of. That's what you're made out of. That's what I'm made out of. That's what everything we see made out of. And that's what the science is. And I'm going to go ahead and let you take a break for a second, and I'll see you on the side. And on the other side, we're going to continue. Thank you, Barbara. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about a Jedi. Barbara's a Jedi Knight. All I did was gave Barbara, I told Barbara that our club is, Barbara's a Toastmaster, obviously, a president of the club. And I said, Barbara, we're going to do an open house. Here's the information. And then, boom, voila. Thank you, Barbara. That was awesome. So where was I? Science. The amazing thing about gemmology to me is that every gemstone that we go Google Gaga over, oh my God, it's so gorgeous, it's so beautiful. Guess what? It's made out of the same, many of them are made out of the same things that you're made out of. It is you. We are carbon-based life forms. When you talk about a diamond, you're talking about a carbon, a material that is made out of carbon, just like you, just like me. The elements, the things that you have gemstones that have similar molecular structures. Like I talked to someone the other day, a garnet. One of my students, a garnet. What is a garnet? What is a garnet? It is a really special kind of gemstone that has two groups, either an XY silicon group on one side and an XY silicon group on the other side. One is the X on one group is a constant, and the Y is a variable. On the other group, the X is a variable and the Y is a constant. And depending on the way the universe put those elements together, creates what you see. Creates what you see. This sapphire grew up in an environment where there was a percentage of iron and titanium to the point where it created that beautiful blue color. How's that any different than, and moms know this, parents know this. When you bring your kid to a good school, and your kid knows that they are loved, and a kid knows that when they go to school and the teacher cares about what they're thinking about and allows them to play with their ideas and they grow, those are the elements. Those are the elements that creates the gemstone of your child, what your child will become. No different than a gemstone. If you do not have in aluminum oxide, if you don't have aluminum oxide with either chromium, which makes it a ruby, or some level of iron and titanium, you get a transparent sapphire. That's what this is. A transparent sapphire. If you put a child, a person, your husband, your wife, if you have them in an environment where they're yourself, in an environment where there's no growth, where you're not being given things that's empowering you, you're going to become something different. My mother, again, I love my mother today, but at that point in time, the things that she was putting inside of me, there was great things she put inside of me, like learning how to read. Telling me, boy, you getting the hell out of here. You know, when I was going, Mom, I don't want to go to school. I don't know where the hell you're going, but you're getting the hell out of here. Some of y'all understand that. My mother made us, school was like, it was either school or death, literally. But it was those elements that she put inside of me that made me who I am today. Science. That's what gemmology is about. That's what all these microscopes and all this is about. Science. How does it all come together? To make. You take that. That's what we all are. Rough. We are just basic elements of a particular molecular structure called human beings. Male, female. And we live in a certain environment in the world. And in that environment, we have school, we have safety, we have all these securities. Hopefully, if you have a lot of crime, but whatever it is, you are the manifestation of that environment. This is a cashmere sapphire. A cashmere sapphire only existed in one place on Earth, because in that one place on Earth was all the conditions that were necessary to create that. You're starting to see the analogy? It's no different than you. If you want to be better, then you got to be with people who want better too. If you are a person who are with someone who is not understanding where you're coming from, your sound, then you got to move on to somebody. That's why I always tell you, I'm not mad at my ex-wife. Not at all. I thank her. It's just that we weren't matched. What she wanted and what she saw wasn't what I saw. And it was being with her couldn't help me become what I wanted to be. Science. History. This is the hard part, because history, the whole concept of gemmology, the whole history of gemmology in the world is extremely violent. Yeah, it's extremely violent. In fact, there's a book, I told you about that book, Gemmology, and I spell it with two N's because of the British influence, the Gemmological Association of Great Britain. So that's why I spell it with two M's. Just for those of you who always say, why do you always spell it with two M's? That's why. There's a book. So I talked about the International School of Gemmology, GIA, first school. Second school was GEMA, and then now the International School of Gemmology, which really made me understand it and bring it all together. Robert James is a Jedi. The way he sees gemstones is like, oh my God. And there's a book, as I told you about, called Stone. And in that book, it says that there's only really three. And when you look at the whole history, especially of gemmology, there's only three things: want, take, have. Want, take, have. That's what the history of gemmology is about. And for years, I have struggled with that because gemmology, especially as a person of color, when you read any kind of gemstone book, 9 times out of 10, this book is about what happened in the Congo, where literally 60 million people in the world, 60 million was killed for natural resources, in this case, rubber. So as a person of color, when you have to understand that it's difficult for me, or was for a very long time, to talk about gemmology, because at the same time you're saying, this is gold, this is beautiful, this is wonderful, but yet thousands of people have died for this. Millions of people have died for this. There's a company right now, there's an American company that owns gold mines in Peru. When they came there, they found this huge vein of gold. They've been mining this for a long time. When they first got there, that region was the 4th poorest region in the whole country. Now, 23 years later, 23 years of mining gold, that same region, those same people are now the number 1 poorest region in the whole country. I can talk about the horrors of gemmology all day. And it pains me sometimes, blood diamonds, blood sapphires, but that's not what I wanted to do. That's not the story that I wanted to tell. I wanted to tell something that's more empowering. That's the decision, the direction that I wanted to take with my understanding of gemmology. How can this help me? How can something beautiful that I'm learning about help me in my own growth? So I decided to take the bad things about gemmology and not so much wipe it out and act like it didn't happen, make you aware of it, but make you understand that that's the antagonist. Those are the things that you have to overcome to become. Every gemstone doesn't look like the gemstone that you have on your hand, your neck, your ears, your toes, wherever. They had to go through a process. They had to become. There was elements that had to be included inside of them. They had to be heated. They had to be irradiated. They had to be cut. They had to be all kinds of things that had to happen. This whole chart right here is literally about treatments. The whole thing is about artificially treated gemstones. Whole chart. Every gemstone, almost every gemstone, well, for the most part, have been treated in some kind of way. You can use that. I have used that. I didn't feel so badly about myself when I realized what diamonds had to go through to become a diamond. I didn't realize how sapphires are. Emeralds. How emeralds are geologically messed up. They do. All gemstones, all emeralds, 99.9% of emeralds have inclusions in it. Meaning there's something wrong with them. They have cracks. They have to have oil. You have to put oil in it to give it that smooth color. And for someone who grew up feeling messed up, feeling like I didn't have value, that resonated with me. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll be an emerald. That works. That worked. The last part is magic. When people used to ask me about magic, I didn't know what to say because as I told you, I didn't necessarily believe in the metaphysics. I didn't believe in what it does. It was just kind of like, well, magic. I knew there was a whole lot of people who did. And I knew that in my development, I would figure out the magic. But you know what I figured out what the magic is? The magic is not whether or not that blue sapphire actually gives you awareness. It's not whether or not that sapphire gives you discipline. No, that's not what it is. The key thing that you really need to understand is whether or not it's not that here's a yellow sapphire, and all of a sudden, this is Wednesday. If someone gives you a yellow sapphire, all of a sudden you're not going to have abundance. You go to a refrigerator, it was empty. Now, honey, you got that yellow sapphire? Yeah, baby. Give it to me for a second. You hold it, and all of a sudden you reopen the refrigerator. Voila! There's food. No. If you're dealing with a bad person at your job, strength of will, you're not going to just get that. All these different qualities, your sexuality is not going to be increased once you have a Maharaja sapphire. You're not going to have more love and forgiveness necessarily because you hold this gemstone in your hand. You can say for each one, the key thing is what? Well, is whether, let me go back, it's whether you believe. You have to believe in it. It's not a matter of whether it has it or not. It's whether you believe that has it. That's the power. Whether you believe in your story, how you got here, how this all came together. I realized this week that what I talk about started way back when I was 4 or 5 years old watching Johnny Quest. I wanted to have a lifestyle of travel. I wanted to learn different languages. I wanted to be like Indiana Jones and just do different things. How do you make that happen? And when you begin to understand the power of stories, you begin to understand that only happens if you begin to believe your story. Your story. Prayers are nothing but stories that you gave to God, in my estimation. That's what a prayer is. And the better your prayers are, I believe, the more effective your prayers become. And that's going back to Toastmasters. Each and every time I spoke on that stage, my speeches, my words just didn't go forward. They went up. They went up. God heard my stories. I began to believe that it was still possible for me to be a Jedi Knight. That's what this is. This is my extension. This show every week is an extension of who I am. And the decision that I made to do this. I love when you guys subscribe. I love it. But the key thing, what makes me happy is when you begin to understand that it's a decision that you have to make on what kind of gemstone that you want to be. What kind of person? Imagine a world where everybody saw themselves as a Jedi. People who are bakers, people who do. Imagine someone who does bridges. Makes bridges. Imagine if you live in the city somewhere in the world and that bridge is all dilapidated, falling down. You wonder, oh my God, is it going to fall down today? Imagine a construction worker who felt like he was a Jedi Knight. Who felt like, man, when I turn a nut and a screw and a bolt, when I do welding, oh, that's going to hold forever. Because not forever, but it's going to hold because of the way I see it. The way I feel, that relationship that I have with that metal, with that wood, with that whatever. Imagine your car, your bus, that washing machine you bought was built by Jedi Knights. And that they knew something inside of them. Their education was the elements that you put into a gemstone, and those elements created who that person is. Think about that scene from Hidden Figures where Kathleen Johnson, when her teacher gave her, when the movie starts, he gives her a piece of chalk. And there's a little black girl from where? Mississippi or somewhere, okay, in the fifth. She did this mathematical equation on the board, and then 30 years later, here she is in NASA, the origins of NASA, and her mission, her commander, mission commander literally gave her. Here you go, Catherine. Show them what we do. And she pulled down that screen and she decided that not only did she know how John Glenn's spaceship was going to go in, she knew exactly where it was going to land within 20 nautical miles. That's a Jedi. At some point in time, she made the decision that math was going to be her extension, was going to be her relation. She understood that her knowledge of math was that her relationship with the Force, and she believed. She didn't go up on that board and go, I don't really know. What do we do? No. She sat there, looked at it, and figured out what she wanted to do. That's what art, science, history, magic talks about. The art is the beauty of what you do. The science is how it all comes together. Who you are, your body type, your hair, the way, something about you, those elements had to come together in a certain way to make you the way you are. Big, small, short, thin, whatever makes you who you are. And then that's the science of it. Those same 118 elements that everybody gets to use, that's in you. The history is, think about all the things that you've done in your life that you were successful in. Think about all the times you got your ass whooped and you came back. You came back anyhow. Think about how many times people told you, yo, man, you can't do that, man. You're too small. You're too this. You're too that. You're too this. You're too that. Think about that. And then think about how it came. That's the magic. That's the magic. The magic is what As a Man Thinketh talks about very soon. So altered has his or her mind become that the workshop can no longer hold her. It has become so out of harmony with his mentality that it falls out of his life as a garment is cast aside, and with the growth of opportunity which fit the scope of her expanding or his expanding powers, he passes out of it forever. They believed. They believed. They believed in their story. And because they believed in their story, they were able to manifest and discover the value of their story. And once you discover the value of your story, you can be anything you want. And that's what we're going to talk about. Each and every week, a different way where you can get to the point of believing and understand the value of your story. So bring a piece of paper and a pencil every time you come. I really enjoyed today. This was, it's amazing being here. I hope you come tomorrow. Again, I'll put the information on my Facebook page again. Thank you so much. And as always, my name is Barry B. Mixon. I am a Gemmological Storyteller. And your homework this week is just to kind of put your name on a piece of paper and put art, science, history, magic, and just kind of map it out. Map out what is the thing that moves you in your life. That's your art. How did those pieces come together? That's your science. You know, the guys, when you grew up and your father taught you how to throw a spiral, and that's what you do. You're a sports coach, you're a football coach or whatever. Think about that. The history is, think about all the things you had to do to get there, to get to where you are today. And those things you'll realize were necessary. That time you lost, that time you got your butt beat, all these other things. And then think about how, when it all came together, when you sat there and said, oh my God, it happened. I won. I graduated. I whatever. That's the magic. So until next week, think about what I'm saying to you. Think about your value. And I'll see you next week with a whole new episode. But until then, au revoir, à te tella, voila. Hey, Gem Hunter family, let me show you something really special.
This is the Star of Adam, the world's largest star sapphire, 1,404 carats. It's called the Star of Adam because in the Muslim religion, Adam lived in Sri Lanka in a place called Adam's Peak right after he left the Garden of Eden. Discover the value. Your story.